All right, we're back and we found the paperwork. All right. I know you guys might laugh, but actually it saves time. We have a little bit of a map. So what I want to do here is I want to add in a different field. We've added in some bound fields here. One of the things we need to do is add another kind of field in here to make sure we can do the deletion. Remember, deletion's easier. We want to add in an ASP dot same. My delete text is also going to be delete. But however, I'm going to talk about this in a second. Right, so here's my delete text. And also my show delete buttons. I want to kind of show delete buttons is equal to true. I want to show that up. As well as, and these are all the different ones we need, my button type is equal to a link. There's different options. Link seems to be the best one for us to work with our application type. Okay, so that's a part of it. Also, what I want to do is control my CSS style again. So I'm going to put that under here. So we'll say CSS style. But it's going to be for what? It can't be CSS style that we had before. If I press Control-C or Control-Space, it's control style CSS class is what I want to put in there. And this is where I have an option of making the button look like, or the link look like a button. So I'm going to say something like button danger, right, for my delete, right? And then maybe button the small for small button, right? All right, we can end that off right there. And that it gives us enough information to put stuff together. Now, one thing to note is this: if I want to inject font awesome icons into my code, I could simply just put it inside my delete text, right? Delete text and most text other than header text. Header text won't work. But if I put it in my delete text, I can actually inject some kind of small icon in here. And the way I would do that is just like this, right? So let's say, for example, I put my I tag in there with a space, and inside my I tag, I do a class, and instead of using double quotes, I use single quotes for my class. I go FA, and then now you got to think of what this delete is, like a trash. So FA dash trash dash O, right? And then maybe FA large, FA dash large, right? So again, I'm putting a font awesome, and if you want to break this up, see how there's different things here. Let me just break this up over two lines so you can see it all nicely. There we go. So I'm putting my font awesome right in here. It's actually, instead of just text, here's my text delete, but I'm putting my font awesome icon right in front of the delete. Let's see how it looks. So Control F5 to run without debugging. Now notice that it just downloaded some NuGet packages and restored NuGet packages for me. It'll do that the first time I run any kind of thing, right? And I do any kind of build, right? So I'm running this thing, and now that I've added my delete button, if everything goes well, I should be able to see this. So a nice little delete button with a little icon, okay? Now there's no functionality. If I click the delete button, it gets this, right? Which means I have to add in, and for all the stuff that I'm doing today, you're going to notice that there's going to be a code behind component to it because there's so much to do. Each one of these code behind options has these new options I'm giving you has a code behind component, okay? One thing to note, when we do any kind of deletion or even editing, I need to have a new attribute that's inside of my header text, inside my ASP grid view header. I got to do something called data key names. And basically what this allows me to do is kind of target which data key I'm using to sort or to use as an order by, or where my course ID is equal to this course ID, right? Now you don't have to choose course ID as the main, or the ID. Instead of course ID, it actually should be student ID, because we're doing students, right? Not courses. So student ID. So data key names is student ID, right? And that makes sense because I would be able to target my my student ID with this. I need to do this for the deletion. I also need, whenever I include another function like this, I need some kind of and this is one of the event handlers. I need on-row deleting, right? Now, why? There's two. There's on-row delete and on-row deleting. Why am I using on-row deleting? Anybody? Why not on-row delete or deleted? Those are the two. One-row deleted, on-row deleting. On-row deleted, it's done. It's deleted. On-row deleting, I can still do stuff while I'm deleting, right? So in other words, check to see if the user's sure I want to delete the option and so on. So I can sit there and go create new event. So I'm just going to double click on that. And it's going to take the name of the student's grid view and create that event based on the student's grid view name. I'm just going to put this on the next line so we can see it. There it is. Okay, so on row deleting, it creates that name. And automatically, if you notice, on the code behind file, it creates a space for us where we can do our work. It's critical that we have this stuff coded, because if we don't do the code behind file, we won't be able to do the delete portion. Okay, so we need to do that. And let me just find that nifty little code behind file. Okay, so on row deleting, what I want to do here is I want to store which row was clicked first. So store which row was clicked. So which row am I deleting? That's the first thing. And I'm going to do that by creating an integer variable, and let's say something like selected row, right, is equal to, and then it's going to be something like, notice that there's an E here. This is almost like the event target. That's what it is. So what am I clicking on? What's my event target, right? So E dot, and I want to kind of target which row is deleting. So row index, and that's the row that I'm going to delete, first thing. So I need to know that when I'm deleting my document. Next, I also need to kind of get the selected student ID. That's the next thing I need to do, right? Using the grid's data key collection, right? That's what I put in there. I put the the data key as student ID. So let's say int student ID is equal to, and then I'm going to kind of point it to the student's grid view, right? Dot data keys, and I'm looking at dropping in the selected row. So that's the index. Selected row is the index that I'm looking at my data keys, right? Looking at the values of the data keys, and they have to match up the value of student ID. This is the syntax. Now I'm getting an error, and the reason for that is because it's waiting for it to be an integer. This isn't quite an integer. There's two ways I can do that. I can cast, or I can convert. My recommendation is we convert to int32, which clears up this error, right? So I'm clear up this error like this. And this gives me the student ID of the item that I'm deleting. Okay. Next in line with this is I need to use the EF framework to find the selected student from the database and remove it. So that's what I'm going to put in there. So use EF to find the selected student in the DB and remove it. Okay, so how do I do that? Remember, when you use the EF framework, we use this using statement with references. So I'm going to say something like default connection. We're going to create a database object, a DB object, based on our connection string, right? And which is equal to a new default connection. You guys should be able to do this if you're following along, right? Once I've got that and I've connected to the database, now I can perform all the tricks that I need to pull with entity framework and link. All right, so I need a new student object. This student object, or an instance of the student class, that's what this is. I'm going to call this deleted student. Deleted student. It's not quite deleted yet, but it will be. I want to pull from the all my student records. So this is the way I've named it. You can call this whatever you like, student records, in db.students, right? Where student records, right, dot student ID, oops, dot student ID is exactly equal to student ID, the one I got from up there, right, which I'll show you in a second. But where it's equal to that, and I want to select student records, the ones I found, right, and I want to use first or default, because if it doesn't find it, what I want it to do is not return an exception, but actually just return null, which is good. Okay, this is the deleted student. So making an instance of the student class. So create object of the student class and store. That's what I'm doing. I'm really storing the query string inside of it. Right. That's what I'm really doing. So I'm taking the query string, and whatever I'm getting, it's an array. I'm getting back a list, if you will, of objects that need to be deleted. Right now, there's only one, because I'm selecting that particular student. One student where the student ID is equal to student ID. That's what's happening here. Okay. So once I've pulled the database and then got the student, I need to remove, right? So I need to remove the student, remove the selected student from the database. All right, so how do I do that? I go db.students, that's the students, dot remove from the table, from the students table remove. Which one is it? The deleted student. Oh, there we go. So this actually removes the one that I've selected based on my selection criteria. It stores all that information, and I'm removing it here with the remove statement. Again, the remove statement is part of the collections, generic collections namespace and class. And if you know anything about lists, all lists have add, remove, insert, and so on. And this is just one method that's part of all lists. And then, of course, what I need to do is save my changes back to the database. So how do I do that? db.savechanges. Oops. There we go. All right, so those are done. Now, after I've removed the student, I want to refresh the database, right? So I want to refresh the grid, which is, I'm going to call this dot get students, which is the way I've already got that up here. This is the get students method. I'm just calling it down here. Not if I hover over it, I get this method gets the student data from the DB. Those comments I put in when I created the comment header, which is up here, right? For my summary and everything else, it's right there. And if I was going to create a comment for this one, I can simply do, there's two ways. One way I can do the // for C#. It creates a kind of a stub for it. The other way is to use the method that I've been using that's compatible with JavaScript as well, which is to use this method, summary. And inside the summary, say this event handler deletes a student from the database using entity framework, right? And then maybe for some other comments at method. Again, I'm not going to copy. I'm not going to type it. I'm going to grab this whole method here and put this in here. So I'm mentioning what method it is at param. So my first param, there's one that's an object, which is sender. That's the type of the instance of the object class, and the other one is of type grid view delete event args, right? So I don't want to type that in, and it's E. E is the event target. That's what it is, right? And then at returns, right? What does it return? Void. So that's really it in a nutshell for my commenting, and this is what I'm expecting you to do for your project part 2. Right, so I want you to go through, and every method, I want you to put down a method header that gives me parameters, basically inputs and outputs for that particular thing, and any kind of comments you want to put in inside your summary about what this thing is. All right, we've done it, but we need to test it. Let's test this out. So I'm going to kind of put Control F5, so to build this thing out, and let's see if this deletion works. Now, in order for us to delete, the smart thing for me to do is to add a couple of students. One thing we won't be able to delete is the original students. Like, for example, Nino Oliveto, if I try and delete him, we might have an error because he's linked to other courses right? He's actually linked, so we'd have to make sure that he's not linked to any other courses for us to do a full delete. We'll take care of that later. But let's say, for example, I want to get rid of Austin, right? Because someone put his name in there, whatever. I want to click delete. If it works, then I should be able to go there and delete it. Now, here's a trick that I ran into a problem earlier today, where because you guys are all using my database, right? Some of you are getting errors because we're all connected to my database at the same time. Maybe my database being the free version of my database using DreamSpark, there's only so many connections we can do at the same time, just FYI. So if you get an error, sometimes that's the reason. Also, one other person did this where I tried to delete the last one, and they deleted it as well because they were watching the thing, and I'm deleting after they're deleting, or they're deleting after me, and they're going to get a null reference exception error. How can we solve this problem? Where we can check, we can do a try-catch inside my code, so I can say, well, we don't want to do this delete. If I get an error, I can put all this, especially the connection string and everything else, all of this in a try-catch, and if I can't perform the delete for whatever, if it causes an exception, then I can say something like, record has already been deleted, one of those kind of things in some kind of message box. I'm not going to do that right now. It's out of scope for what we're doing, but just wanted to point it out. If it does happen, it's usually because it's more than one user trying to delete the same record at the same time. All right, getting back. So we've got our delete button, right? That's one thing we wanted to check out. And what I want to point out now is that, we have a pretty big list. So if I was going to look at the list we have, it's a pretty big list, and I want to page up this list a little bit, especially if I add some more users. Let's add a couple more users. So I'm going to click the Add Student button here for a second, and I'm going to add a couple of people. So let's say Smith, Jane Smith. Maybe she has a middle name, Jane Mary Smith. I don't know. And then let's pick a date. So it's today's date, and click Save. So we added her, and let's add another couple students. You can see how it's going to get pretty hairy. Jones, Xavier, right? And let's put in there we go, save. And you can see that as I go, I'm getting pretty long here, right? And so it might be really cool if we were able to create a pagination, or paging, if you will, for our file. And again, this is part of what I recommend that you do. It's not required for Lab 3, but it's good to understand how to do pagination. It's not so bad. So how do I enable it? Well, if I go back to my ASP.NET Grid view, I want to add in one option, which is allow paging. That's the first part, allow paging. And I got to say that is true, right? So allow paging. The other one is I want to talk about is the page size attribute should be set to a default. So I want to set that, let's say, to 3. So only 3 users are being shown at the same time. And if I press Control S to save, and then I want to Control F5 to run without debugging, you can see that I'm automatically going to get paging happening, right? Let's take a look and see what I get. I got my paging. I only got 3 options. But if I click on one of these pages, and by the way, the challenge for you guys who are watching and with me is if you can style the pages here. I've tried pagination on Bootstrap. I've tried different things. It's pretty ugly just to have these numbers here. We might have to use custom CSS. I'll have a solution next week. But if I click on page 2 or 3, I get this error because remember what I said. Any additional features we want to add into our functionality there has to be a code behind portion of it from now on, pretty much for what we're doing. All right. So how do I add in this code behind piece to it? Well, I want to capture on-page index changing. That's the next thing I want to add in, right? So, okay, so we get allow paging, and then on-page index changing, right? Here it is, on-page index changing. I want to create a new event. Here it is, and we'll just put this on the next line here, so we just don't take up too much space. Which creates a new event handler in my ASP.NET CS file, the code behind file. Let's go there and see that. There's my code behind file, right? You can see that that's been added. And so we want to add in this this paging thing to take care of it, right? If you notice that what I want to do is I want to capture the page number. So let's set the new page number. That's the new one. So I mean, when I say the new page number, it's the page index, right? So I want to say something like student grid view. There it is. Dot page index. My page index. is equal to, again, we're going to use the E for the event target. The event target that we're clicking on, which is my new page index. Okay, so that's the first thing. So page index changing, all that does is when I click on that page on the bottom of my screen there, it's going to take me to that next part. All right, and then of course what I want to do is refresh the grid. You're going to see this done all the time. So refresh the grid. Very, very simple. This dot get students. All right, so that's done. Right, let's put some comments for this one too. Right, really quickly. I'm going to say something like, here's my summary. I'm going to say this this event handler allows pagination to occur for the students page. So it does. And then of course we want to put in the @ method. This is really long, so I recommend you copy it like this, right? When you do this kind of stuff, no need to type it if you don't have to. At param, again, the first one is object sender, just like before. And then at param, and I'm not going to copy this. I'm just going to copy it here and paste it. I'm not going to type it. I mean, and then it's the E, and then of course at returns void. Okay, so that's something that we've been putting in. Once we get some good commenting going on. Okay, so we've done this. Let's test it. I'm going to Control F5 for this, and then we'll put it up on GitHub. I haven't done that yet. Added a couple things, paging and deletion. Right? Okay, cool. So we've got our student coming up, and you can see that it's paging. There's 3. If I click on number 4, you can see that it goes to the last page. Right? But there's a problem here that I have. If I want to try and delete, by the way, ISA, let's delete this one. I don't have any confirmation. It just allows me to delete. I got to fix that part. And also, I can't, it's always 3 or less, 3 items or less. What if I wanted 5? What if I wanted 10? We're going to fix that. First, before we do that, I want to talk about uploading it to GitHub. So we have a copy of that. So I'm going to go to Team Explorer, done some changes here. I'm going to go to Sync for the first time. And I'm going to click on Visual Studio 2015. There's an area here that says GitHub. I've integrated GitHub in here. I'm going to search for my Georgian College there. And then it's going to be COMP2007, Summer 2016, Lesson 5C. This one. I'm going to click Publish, which is going to create a new repository up on my GitHub account automatically. Now I'm going to press Changes. And you notice I've modified the students table. And I'm going to say something like, added delete functionality students page. I'm in the process of getting the paging done. I have not finished yet. Commit all, home, and then sync and push. So now you have up on GitHub, you have these changes. You can always follow along if I went too fast. Okay, cool. Well, it's cool that I can do paging, and I can reduce the number of items, the number of rows that I'm reducing, but I want more control. I want to be able to control how many rows I can see at once, which means I need to make some UI changes again. UI stuff happens on the front end. Code behind is the stuff that drives it on the back end. Let's see how this works from a UI control perspective. What do I want to do? Well, remember we have this link right here. This link right here that adds a student to the site, right? So a new student, all right? But I want to give some space between the add, and I want to add a new control called a dropdown list. My dropdown list. And when I press it, I want to do a couple things. My dropdown list should have a name, a default name. So it's an ID of, I'm going to call it page size dropdown list. So it changes the page size that I'm working with. That's what it does. So I call it something different before. I also want a label. I'm going to make it a regular label. Here's my regular label. And my regular label is going to have a 4, which is going to point to page size dropdown list. And I could wrap this in a div tag. So here's my div tag. I want to wrap all this stuff inside. So this is my label and everything else. And I could make my label, let's prettify that a little bit. So format selection. I could make my label some kind of other class. Like for example, I could make it some kind of data set or whatever for now. But all I have right now is the page size drop-down list and a couple of list items that are defaulted. One thing I also want to add in here is in the label is records per page. That's what I want to kind of indicate. How many records per page am I looking at? And then in my drop-down list, I want to add in a couple of things in the header, which is auto postback. Auto postback should be true. Right? So when I click on my drop-down list, it's going to post back to the server immediately. And also my CSS class is going to be, here's something interesting, button. You can change this, button default. So it's kind of the gray button, button small, and then a drop-down toggle class, drop-down toggle class. So that's what that is going to look like. My list items, each list item is going to have the text. So that, for example, 3 would be the text, and the value that I'm going to look at is also 3. And then this would be 5. So let's say let's just do 3, 5, and all, right? And then the value here would also be 5, right? In my drop-down list. And let's do one more. So I'm going to copy this drop-down list here, this list item, and then put in something like, I don't know, the text should be all. So I want to see all, everything. And maybe 3, 5 isn't really that great. Maybe we can put another one in there as well. And then, but the value here would be something like, I don't know, 10,000. Why? Because that way, I mean, there's not 10,000 items, right? It might be 10,000 students, but if there's not, maybe you want to make this a really big value, something big. That's that. Okay, just for being online here, we're doing a little bit different than we saw earlier. Let's say in one more. So 3, 5, and let's say 10. So 3, 5, and 10, and this would be 10. So a couple of values here in our drop-down list. Okay, so that's one thing on our drop-down list. And the other thing we're probably going to need is to test it. So to make sure that it looks okay. So I'm going to kind of kick this off again. Control F5. Now we should see a kind of a drop-down list appear that's above my grid view. Right? If we've done it properly, there it is. So there's records per page, and we've got a little drop-down list right here. And if you notice, I've got 5, 10, and all. Even if I click onto it right now, it doesn't do any harm. It doesn't do any good. I just can click on this, and nothing happens, right? But this will change how many records I want per page. I want 3, 5, or 10, or all. Right now, it's defaulted to 3. Okay, let's write the code behind to make it functional. Right? So how do I do that? Well, I need an event. Every time I want to do a code behind, I need an event. It's got to go in here. So I'm going to kind of put on the next page. I'll say on, and you see that there's on. The one that I want for this one is on selected index changed. And I want to make it a new event. So double click on the event. Which what it'll do is make it a massive, look at this massive method. Page size drop down list, selected index change, what it's going to be called over here. There it is. And what I want to do on the code behind file, right, is where all the magic happens again, right? That's where everything goes on. So what do we do here? We want to set the new page size. That's the first thing. It's not that difficult. So set the new page size. So the first one was set the new page number. This one does. And this one set the new page size. All right. So again, what I want to do is I want to point to the student's grid view, right? Dot page size is equal to, again, it would be the same thing except for I can't do page size drop-down list selected value directly. So if I just do page size drop-down list dot selected value, right? That's the one I want. But notice I get an error because it's not matching up with this one. And why? We have to make it an int32 because normally it's a string. So I'm going to do convert. Got to int32 just to be safe, or you can also cast it. Again, and we convert it. So that's the first thing. So now we've established a new page size. Okay, 1. And of course, what we're going to do next, refresh. Refresh the grid. Always keep refreshing the grid, right? This dot get students. Why? Because there is no two-way data binding. As soon as we, like in Angular, we do it one time, and if we want to refresh the grid, then we've got to call the function to refresh it for us. That's what we have to do. Okay, so let's test this out. So again, we'll run it again, Control F5 to run without debugging. And when it runs, now if I choose 5, I have 5. If I choose 10, I have 10. And if I choose all, I have every one of them. There we go. There's all. Okay, so there's a bunch of them that I can see here, and I can always go back to 3 if I want to see only 3. So pagination accompanied by page size. So how many elements that I want to see at the same time. Okay, so that's really done. This piece is over. So let's put that up to GitHub. So Team Explorer. Pagination and page size control. Page size control. It's staged. I'm going to go home, and I'm going to go sync and push. That'll push everything up to GitHub. Yay, we got all that done. I'll leave the commenting to you if you want to, just from a time perspective. Right now, I'm kind of running like a train. So that's one. I want to add in some sorting functionalities, right? So if you notice here, I've got my paging. I want to add sorting, because sorting is one of the things that's required in your lab, right? Notice the lab 3. You need to add in the grid view. And then we did this piece, so this is check. You know how to do this. JavaScript confirmation we haven't done yet, but this piece, the delete part, is done. We've enabled paging, but not sorting. Let's do the sorting piece now. That's going to take a little bit of time. And then we'll take a short break. Yeah. So for sorting, how do we, and we have to enable it again on the front end. So first we do it on the front end, and then we follow up with a back end function, right? So just like we did paging, over here where we said allow paging, we're going to allow sorting, right? So we're going to go here and we'll go allow sorting. We're going to make that as true. Now here's the thing. In order for us to actually make this functional, each one of the fields we want to sort has to have a little expression, a sort expression at the end, right? So here we go. So sort expression, which matches up to a field in the database. So student ID. It doesn't have to be the same field, all right? It just, in this particular case it is, but it's not always the case. So sort expression is equal to, again, last name and sort expression. So once I've done this piece, just this piece alone, here's first mid name. One more, right here, sort expression is equal to, and this is pretty long, enrollment date. There we go. Got to be accurate though. That's what it looks like right now. Once I've done this piece, and that's all I've done, I've enabled each of the header items to be links. Okay, so that's what the first thing that happens. So each of the headers, it moves from being just a static label to a link. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. So if I kind of Control F5, you can see that the top of the header now, each of the headers, is a link. Do they work? Of course not, because you haven't set that up yet. But they're there for sorting. So if I want to sort by last name, I'd be able to click here and I can sort as ascending or descending. Okay, cool. Well, like we said, now that we've set up this piece so we can allow sorting, we need to create a way, an event handler to help us do that, right? So of course, what is it called? Onsorting. Onsorting. Onsorting is equal to a new event handler. There it is. Now this, my friends, is going to take a little bit more work for us to do, just FYI. So be prepared for some heavy typing, right? Why? Because sorting is not easy. I still think between the two, if I was going to say sorting and editing, like the edit functions, we did or the update of the database. Update, definitely harder than anything else. Definitely harder than creation or reading or deleting. Updating is harder, like in terms of our code, right? Lots of more code. But also sorting takes a lot of effort. Okay, so we're gonna have to kind of put this together. So to set this up, we need to make some changes to the entire document. Here's how we start off. 1, if not is postback, I want to create a way to save my sort decisions, which column I'm sorting, the sort column, as well as the sort direction, ascending or descending. I want to be able to save that across postbacks. The only way I can do that is store it in a session variable of some kind, or a secondary option, which is not as favorable, is create a hidden field inside your form somewhere. That's the old way of doing it, and then save your value in there, right? So, I don't recommend that because that's bad, right? And you don't want to save something. It actually will appear someone does a view source. This way is a little cleaner. And how do we do that? Well, we set up a session variable that we call something like sort column. So our sort column. Now, here's something that to note, right? Sort column is not a real variable. We're making it up, right? And we're going to call this student ID, right? So the default sort column is going to be the student ID, default sort column. Right? The student ID. Notice how when I set it up in the session variable, right, I just called it something. When I call it and assign it, I create it, just like we do in JavaScript. Right? So if I have a property, as soon as I assign something to it, JavaScript creates it. Up until then, there was no sort column, but now there is. Right? The other thing we need to do is take care of another variable, which is going to be sort direction. So we need sort column and sort direction, and the sort direction by default is going to be ascending. Notice this is in all caps, right? Why? We're going to use this as a query, right? We're going to use this as part of our query. So those are the two things that I want you to set up on is postback. So as soon as the page loads, we set these two things up. Okay, we also need a new NuGet package to make this happen, right? So I'm going to go to Solution Explorer, right-click on my solution, and go Manage NuGet Packages for Solution. And I need to browse system.link.dynamic. And if I search for that, one day when it connects to the there it is. The first one, system.link.dynamic. I want to choose that one. I want to link it up to my project and click Install. What this is going to do is it's going to give me additional libraries and functionality for creating a queryable object, right, that I can add into my query that I'm making with the database. Okay? So that's what I wanted to do. Yeah, it's gone. I've done that. Now that I've got my NuGet package up here where I attach using statements, I want to add that in. So I want to do something like using system.link, right, .dynamic. Add that in. So now I have access to that library, and I can create something called a queryable object. Okay. Notice that in my get students, everything is golden so far, but I need to make some changes here. One thing I need to do is add in some kind of sort string, and I want to do it inside of my using statement, right? So I want to create a new sortable object. So let's make a new string. We're going to call our sort string. My sort string is going to be the following: session dot or sort column, right? And then of course we're going to cast it to string because it's an object, plus space plus session, and then we're looking at sort direction. We're going to cast that to string. Okay, so that's the query, the new query that we're going to add in. Okay, so what I want to do is theoretically we could have probably added it in here with a order by clause, right? But what I want to do that works is in here, instead of just this to list, what I want to be able to do is do something like as queryable. Now I can't get this unless I have that the thing I just added in, the system.link. Then using statement that I just added in, this one here, that dynamic, gives me the ability to put as queryable in here. And then I'm going to do it as order by order by, and then I'm going to put in, of course, my sort string. Put my sort string in there. Right, there's my sort string. And then that's going to be my order by. And then, of course, I want to convert it to list. Okay, so that's going to be my new object. So I've just modified my get student so that I always sort by ascending or descending, and I create my I kind of select which column, and I order by column and by ascending or descending. That's what I'm doing here with this one. Could you do it in here? Seems likely, but we've tried it. Rich and I have tried it, and it's not easy to make it work. Seems that we need that NuGet package to make it work properly. Okay, so that's one piece. So we've done one. So this is the second thing. So the first thing is the UI. Second thing is fixing this part and assigning session variables. Third part, to make the basic sort functionality work, is we've got to modify our student grid view sorting method, right, which is way down here. We just created this thing. This is the one. So sorting, I mean, it sounds pretty easy, but what we want to do is get the column to sort by. Well, we know which one that is, right? We're going to look at the session variable. This is where we stored it, which is sort column. Sort column. There we go. That's what we called it. And this one is equal to, of course, the target E sort expression. Notice there's also sort direction, but we haven't been able to make that work like that either. Sort expression. Cool. And then, of course, I want to refresh the grid. After I've selected that, refresh the grid. Okay, so that's like this. This is where that get student stuff happens. It refreshes the grid with the new sorting values, right? And then after that, we're going to create a toggle. So if I click on it a second time, toggle the direction. So the first time it's going to be the direction is going to be ascending, but if I click on it again, it'll change to descending. How do I do that? I want to do it in one line. I could certainly do it in 9 lines. If session sort direction is equal to ascending, then the session sort direction is equal to descending, else session sort direction is equal to ascending, and then with curly braces in it. But I want to do it in one line, and I can do that with the ternary operator. So we're going to do this, session, and we're going to say sort direction, right, is equal to session sort direction dash toString. If it equals to ascending, question mark, then make it descending. Otherwise, make it ascending. One line. Why? How does this work? It's like saying this. Hey, if my sort direction is ascending, then session sort direction is equal to descending. Otherwise, else, if session sort direction is equal to descending, then make it ascending. That's what it does. So it's all one line. The question mark and the colon are if it's true, then do this one. If it's false, then do this one. Okay, just like we've done before. And this works across all C-influenced languages, C#, C++, Swift. I think it works for that. JavaScript for sure. PHP, Java. You should know this thing by now. Okay, good. So we've got this piece working, and we can toggle our direction. Let's test this thing out, or else have we been wasting our time this whole time? So Control F5. And let's take a look. So what I want to do is when I click on something, it's going to sort by, let's say, last name. So I sort by last name. You can see that it changes. If I want to see the whole list, so let's look at the whole list here, right? And I click on this, I can sort by, last name, and it goes the other way, or I can sort ascending. So ascending and descending. But it would be really nice, and this is where the pain in the ass comes in. It would be really nice to have some kind of carrot or an arrow to tell us which way it's going and which one. You're like, no, it wouldn't be nice. No, please don't do this. No, Tom, it's enough pain for the sorting. Yes, it is pain. It's pain. but we're going to make it work, right? How do we do this? Well, one thing to note is I've got to inject something here inside my cell in order for this to work, okay? And it takes a little bit of coding. I don't expect you to remember any of this stuff because it's so complex, just letting you know. Well, not complex, just there's a lot of code to remember. And you know, frankly, I don't remember it either. But it's good to understand the basics of it. So one is we need to create a on-row data bound event, right? On-row data bound. And what we're going to do here is when we create the on-row data bound, it creates a student's grid view row data bound event, right? So it creates it inside the code behind file. It's a new event. Why? Because I'm clicking on the row. So anytime I click on a row, this event will trigger, right? I don't want it to trigger for all things. I only want it to trigger when I want it to work for me, right? So how do I code that? Well, I want to say if, first of all, is postback, if is postback is true this time. That's the first thing. So check to see if I'm getting a postback. If, of course, the other part is my event target row type is exactly equal to data control type dot header. So if I'm looking at the header row, right? So if header row has been clicked, that's the first thing, right? I got to check only the header row. I don't care about the other rows if they're clicked, but definitely if the header row is clicked, right? I want to do something. There's a lot of layers here. I want to create an object to add in, and I want to make it something we haven't seen before. It's something going to be called a link button. So I'm going to say link button. So I'm going to create an instance of a link button object. It's going to be called link button for now, right? Is equal to a new link button. Link button, my friends, is just a control that has a link. That's it. And guess what I'm going to put there? Font awesome, right? I'm going to inject the font awesome caret as a link button into my row, right? That's what I'm trying to do. Okay. This is where it gets a little hairy, so you know, hold on to your seats for me to write this down, right? All right, so what I want to do is do something like this for, and I want to make this index, right? Here's my index. Okay. For my index is less than the students grid view dot columns dot count. So I'm saying, hey, as long as it's this for loop is less than the columns count, I want to loop through each one of the columns is what I'm going to do, right? It's got to be less than that. And you know what? Make sure that it's column count -1. I think I left that out in the first classes, which might be a problem actually. So when I click on the columns, as long as it's column count -1, everything else index ++. So go to the next one. Now I'm going to check to see if students grid view be okay. Columns index. So the index of the column that I'm clicking on, if the sort expression, right, is exactly equal to the session variable that we got from before, which is the sort column that we're clicking on, sort column, right? And we're going to, of course, put that toString, give us that value. If that's true, if the expression is equal to the sort column, right, which would be true because student ID is equal to student ID, that column is equal to the sort expression, then, just to make sure that it's working, here we go. This is where you can probably do another ternary operator, but it's too long. It's probably going to be easier for us to make it more than one line now because the single line would be too long to see. So just from a readability perspective, I'm doing it this way. Session, sort direction. One day when my VMware comes back to live, then we'll be able to continue. Yeah, so session sort direction. Session sort direction dot toString is equal to ascending, if that's true, right? Then what do I want to do? Well, I want to say link button, my link button dot text, the one I'm inserting, my link button text is going to be equal to hang on to your hats for font awesome, right? Class is equal to FA. Make sure it's a single quote there. FA dash caret dash up, right? And FA dash large, right? Close the single quotes, and then close off the I tag, right? That's going to be what we're going to put in the link text. So we're going to insert a caret that's with a caret that a little arrow that points up when it's ascending. Else, if it's something else, like descending, would be probably something where we want to take the same text over here. Oops, take the same text and put it in here, right? But instead of caret up, we're going to say caret down. Now, could I have done it in one line? Absolutely. It's a little bit, too much, but this is one. So we've set up our link text. Now at the bottom of this, inside the same if statement, we're going to say my event target row cells index, whatever the index of the row cells that I'm looking at, right? Dot controls dot adding a new control called link button. So take that link button that we made, add some text to it, which is the icon from Font Awesome for the arrow up and the arrow down, right? And then inject it into the cell of the header row that I want it in. That's what I'm doing here. Okay, cool. Let's test this thing, and then we'll take a short break, and then we'll do editing, or the updating, if you will. So Control F5. Let's see how this works, right? And you might think when you first see this that it didn't work, right? Because, hey, where's the caret? Well, actually, it's there, but it has to be enabled, right? So there it is. So you see that the caret's there, this little up arrow, right? It's there now. And if I click onto it again, right, it can go descending. If I click on last name, ascending, click on it again, descending, right? And it no matter where I click, it gives me that little arrow that moves it up and down, depending on what it is. And it'll toggle it up and down, depending on my solutions. So sorting, that part of lab number 3 is done. Yeah? Yes, it does. It's because it's a link, right? Link button. That was my solution, guys. I'm sorry. Link. Yeah. Don't click on the caret. Okay. Don't click on my caret. The original way that Rich did it was with an image, which is okay, but I don't recommend it nowadays. I think it's easier. It's a lot lighter, lightweight to have some kind of icon, a font icon, a little easier. It's a pain in the ass to inject it, the way we did it, with all the stuff we did, but I mean, it still works. All right, this is great. This is a great stopping point. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll do editing, how to edit a student, right?